VanderKamp is running for sheriff this year, and he's here to talk to us about his campaign. And I didn't know this till him and I were talking last week. His wife Rachel actually is one of the ones in charge of the Key Club at Trinity Lutheran, so I never put two and two together. But Ken has been with the sheriff's office for over 20 years. He has a huge amount of experience in all different parts of the department, from obviously front lines through administration. Currently, he leads the Central Oregon Drug Enforcement team. He's in charge of all of the detectives, which would be a lot like trying to herd cats. So he is running this year, obviously, against William Bailey, and he's here to tell us how he is qualified for the position.
Thank you. I've got a question, though. So when I was in high school, sorry, I'm going to make you earn your money today with that. I move around, I don't sit still. When I was in high school in Los Angeles, there was a club in my school, Kiwanis.
Key Club.
Was there? But I remember it being called Kiwanis. Is that still a thing, or was it a thing?
Probably went out with the
It was a while ago.
women's lib or something.
It was like in the early, like the 90s, because it was all girls,
Yeah.
and they had two boys in the class, or in the group, and I was one of the two boys, and in hindsight now, I'm thinking, man, I felt kind of weird about that, because it was, I'm not sure what my role was in Kiwanis, but I remember it was part of Kiwanis, but I don't know if it's still around or not.
The Key Club visitation is about going to the club we sponsor at Redmond High School. It's
Makes
called
sense.
Key Club now.
Right, so my wife is one of the co-teachers for the Key Club in Bend, which was funny because I didn't realize she got the emails for your group. So she was texting me at 10 o'clock telling me to make sure I wasn't late to this. I thought that was funny. She wanted to make sure, don't be late, as if you guys were going to report back to her. So I don't
We will.
We will? Okay, good. I'm glad I got here early. So my name is Kent VanderKamp, and I am here to tell you this is the exciting time in Deschutes County. For the first time in a long time, you guys, the voters, are going to get to choose your next sheriff from two candidates that are not already in office or been appointed. It's the first time in a long time we've seen that in our office, because usually we have one that's already been appointed or one that's an incumbent. So this is the first time where you have two non-incumbents. It's very rare in our county. My campaign, I'll give you a little bit of my background. So I started in business 28 years ago. Right out of college, I took a leap and started working for Toyota for a little while. I was working at the factory, went to Japan, came back, went to business school, decided to start a mortgage company on a whim, and just kind of had this vision and created a mortgage company. Started with 12 people. When I left San Diego to move to Bend, I brought 13 of my 49 employees, and they followed me up here, and we split the company, half San Diego and half in Bend. So my background's always been in business. I brought my new baby. My oldest daughter was 2 at the time. My wife Rachel and I have been married about 27 years now. We had our second child here and raised both of them here in Bend. Our daughters are now off doing their own thing. I have one that's in nursing school in Boise, and another that's studying accounting in University of Arizona in Tucson. So I'm an empty nester, which is still kind of an adjustment for me. But I've been now at the Sheriff's Office about 20 years. I too started as a volunteer at Search and Rescue. I was a volunteer pilot and a volunteer medic for our Search and Rescue team. I loved volunteering, and I did it so much I started kind of expanding. I am currently a member of Rotary Greater Bend. I also fly for Angel Flight. Anybody familiar with Angel Flight? It's kind of growing up here in Central Oregon. So I've been a pilot with them now for a couple of years, and we do non-emergent flights for people who need care that live in rural parts of Oregon or have a family member that's been injured and they need transportation. So we do a lot of rural Eastern Oregon, Eastern Washington, to the metro areas. Most of the patients that I see are people that are seeking like cancer treatments in the big areas, or they're trying to get some sort of chronic care. So I've loved doing that for a while. I teach several different classes. I teach here in Redmond at the Latino Community Association, where I get to use my mediocre Spanish to teach immigration tutoring for people who want to become immigrants, legal citizens, from immigration status to legal citizenships. Great program. And then I also teach scuba diving and aviation to Boy Scouts here in Redmond and in Bend. So that's my background community-wise. So after a couple years of search and rescue, then Sheriff Les Stiles asked me to become a deputy, and the timing was perfect because For those of you who don't remember, 2008 was a great time to be in the real estate business. And I saw that train coming, so I took him up on his offer. And so Les Stiles hired me to be a special services deputy. So I was working in the backcountry, mostly up in the High Lakes areas, doing snowmobile, off-road motorcycle enforcement, a little bit of forestry work. And then from there, my passion grew. I was able to get hired full-time as a patrol deputy. Worked in patrol for a few years before being promoted to detective. Detective work was my absolute favorite. I got to work in major crimes, criminal investigations, street crimes, and then lastly I was sent to Code. And that's where I am today. So Code is Central Oregon Drug Enforcement. I don't know, you probably see some of our fine work in the newspaper because there's a lot of it lately. But what it is it's a multi-jurisdictional, multi-agency task force. We are funded by HIDA, or the High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area. And all of our money comes from DC through the White House Council of Drug Control. So our work takes us to Jefferson, Crook, and Deschutes County. I supervise right now 12 detectives, special agents, and 2 analysts with the Oregon National Guard. And then in our house we also have a child welfare worker and a prosecutor. So our work takes us all over the region. Right now we see probably mostly fentanyl is probably a close, with meth as being a close second. So that work now I've been doing that about 7 years in my career. So I've been at the Sheriff's Office a total of 20 years now. And I've watched the county grow, I've watched the crime grow, and over the last 7 years, our office has been through some interesting times, if you haven't kept up on the news. So my big platform right now is to get our office forward, move it forward. We need to get away from the negative headlines, the court cases, and some of our HR problems. The other thing too right now is trying to get our homelessness issue under control, followed by our drug issue, and then crime and our traffic problem. We haven't been keeping tabs. We've had 9 fatalities in the last 48 days now in Central Oregon, which is close to being a record number, but it's a very high number for winter, which traditionally we don't see those type of fatalities because people tend to drive slower. Those are usually the numbers that we see in the summertime. So I am a big proponent of bringing traffic safety back to the forefront, as well as being more investigative in some of our major crashes, which some of these fatalities, a large percentage of them are DUI drivers. And it's unfortunate, but it's not just alcohol, it's also medications and controlled drugs, or uncontrolled drugs. It's everything right now. So bringing that back is also my other concern. The big one right now is mental health crisis. I put drugs, homeless, and mental health all in the same bucket because they all are intertwined. It's been a hard conversation, but we finally have the legislature in Salem listening to that message this week. I'm hoping that we'll see some change come from Measure 110. Measure 110 could be a conversation of itself. It's been an absolute horrific train wreck of an experiment. The devastation in our community has been huge. I will tell you, yesterday alone, I was working on a case unrelated to what I'm about to tell you, but Ben PD had 3 overdose call-outs simultaneously. And I'm sure he can tell you, working 3 different overdoses at the same time with 3 different fire crews and 3 different ambulance crews and police is not an easy task. But that's the reality of what we're seeing right now in the area, is a lot of overdose. And we can usually tell when new drugs come in because we see things like that. It's unfortunate. And then we have these cursory crimes. People dependent on drugs, when they're high on drugs or they're having a mental crisis, they're not able to make decisions for their own health or their own well-being. And letting people live in the dirt and in their cars is not compassionate, and it's not helping them. It's putting them in bigger danger than anything else. So we need to figure out some really hard solutions to that. Measure 110 will be one of them. I was talking earlier to somebody. There's a Supreme Court case going on right now involving the Grants Pass and the Boise case involving camping in the cities. That will determine the future of what homelessness will look like in Oregon. So watch the paper. I think you'll see that decision in the next week to 10 days. But that's the, I think that'll be the crux of our future here in homelessness. Fiscal responsibility is another big one. Our office has been having runaway spending for years now. So my goal is to get that spending under control, find the waste, cut the waste, and then balance our budget again at the Sheriff's Office. The permanent tax districts, is everybody familiar with those? we're here for that vote. So traditionally, sheriff's offices in Oregon, every 4 years you get to hear from your sheriff saying, please give me money. And that's been a system here for many, many years. Deschutes County was one of them. I'm not going to lie, I waited until they had a permanent funding district before I came looking for a job because I didn't want to have to get a pink slip every 4 years and told, check in with me next week, we'll see what the voters say. So many years ago, Sheriff Stiles and Sheriff Blanton put together a permanent funding tax district. There's 2 tax districts. They were designed and developed to be spread over about 40 years. We're only about year 21 of that. We're already maxed out, but we shouldn't be. That's the problem because our tax revenues are still at or above what the forecasts were. Our spending is almost double what we had forecasted. So that's my concern is if you probably noticed your last tax bill was slightly higher. So we at the Sheriff's Office have increased that. My goal is to get that back down to where it should be and not come to the voters for another tax district. I think that's going to be what we're going to see next should I not be successful. So bringing back that fiscal responsibility is the next important thing for us. Transparency and collaboration. Since I've been at Code, I've collaborated with the DA's office, the U.S. prosecutor, child welfare, public health, mental health, and I've all brought them into my office and said, we all have the same problem. We're all attacking it from different sides, but what it's turned into is a game of tug of war. We're not actually succeeding in anything. We're busy pulling pieces of this problem, but we're not bringing anything to the table. So now having everybody to the table made a huge difference of solving some of these problems because a lot of the people I deal with in the drug world are also seeking services in the mental health world or drug treatment or family services. And so we have all joined forces now at Code, so now we're speaking at the same table. That's what I want to bring to the entire office now, is bringing people to the office rather than pushing them away. Those are the 4 major things that I'm going to bring to the Sheriff's Office. I am out talking to people, answering questions about what it is that you expect from your Sheriff's Office. For the first time in a long time, too, we're bringing people into the office and asking, what is it you want to see in your Sheriff's Office? And having that availability. My goal is to have this conversation with as many people as I possibly can and invite people to the table. And that means everybody. Great questions here today are what make great ideas in our Sheriff's Office and really bring solutions to the county. Are there any questions about my platforms? I don't want to take Michelle's time away either. Yes?
So you said fiscal responsibility, and what are your actual strategies or activities that you see needing to happen to bring that into more responsible?
So right now the big thing is our spending. We're spending things, I'll give you some examples. If you haven't read the newspaper, golf carts have been a hot topic at my office for the last 6 months. I don't have an explanation as to what we are doing with 5 golf carts. I know that we use one at the fair. It's all 5 of them are now sitting in a container in a lot somewhere. I don't know why we bought those. When we go to the voters and say, hey, or to the commissioners and say, hey, commissioners, will you take our tax revenue? I know we have a variable tax revenue. We just need to max it all out. We need all of it, every penny. We need all those hotel transient taxes. We need all those federal grant money. And at the same week, you turn around and you buy 5 golf carts and a Slurpee machine with taxpayer money. I can't justify, I can't explain that. The big thing is going to be getting our spending back in line. We need to stop spending because we see shiny things. That's really how we spend money now. I come from private business. There's a few business people here. My goal at the end of every year was to have money in my books. Government spending, when I went from private sector to public, now the public sector is spend all the money so there's 0 at the end of your fiscal year. There's no more saving money. There's no more putting money away for a rainy day, putting it into more meaningful programs like a mental health solution. But Slurpee machine and golf carts was the answer that the current administration and my opponent believes was the way to spend that money. I don't agree with that. And I'm giving you one of many, many, many examples if you haven't read the newspaper. So spending needs to come back to normal. We need to cut waste, and then we need to really balance our budget and be lean. The last couple of years have been the tough spending years for families. People aren't sitting around at the dining room tables saying, hey, should we buy a gallon of milk and some eggs or a golf cart with a Slurpee machine? Those have been hard decisions. We're not making those hard decisions. We need to do that first. I also will tell you this. Property tax values, assessed values have peaked. We, as a county, in all the counties, have been living high on those climbing assessed values. They've now peaked. The money train is going to slow down. At the same time, Deschutes County has the transient hotel tax, and we also have federal money. My opinion is we need to get off of, we as a sheriff's office need to get off of that hotel transient tax, and we also need to get away from being so dependent on federal grant money. We need to be self-contained and not so dependent on these other revenue sources. We learned that lesson during COVID. When we learned that lesson, really learned that lesson during the timber, when we lost all that timber money. A lot of counties became bankrupt quickly because of their dependence on that money. It will happen again. And as a sheriff's office, we can't go to the voters and keep asking them for more money when we're being irresponsible with it. That's where I'm coming from with it. Answer your question?
Yep.
Thank you. Amber.
I just wanted to tell you really quick, she's not speaking, so you have the whole PowerPoint.
Oh, you're not? I'm sorry, I thought you were.
She owns that part of
You
it.
sure?
She just has the whole
You have nothing to say? Okay, good. Sorry, I thought you were coming in behind me, so I felt pressure. Okay, good.
No pressure.
Okay. Thank you. Yes?
What kind of services are you providing in the healthcare area out of the sheriff's office, and what would you do to improve it?
The biggest thing for us right now is in our jail. So in our jail, we have to provide, so let me cover some of the things that we're statutorily required as a sheriff's office to provide, and then tell you what we're not, which usually is kind of a surprise to some people. So in Oregon, the sheriff has to provide a jail, civil processing, court security, and search and rescue. There's nothing in there at all about providing law enforcement. So Klamath County, for example, when they were really struggling with timber funds, they stopped providing police service. So you call 911, and they were running police service. They had 2 police cars between Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Hey, there's somebody robbing my house. Call back on Monday. That's no joke. That was literally happening in Oregon. And so as that service expanded, we have the jail now. So search and rescue in the jail are where our healthcare services are. I also work as a medic on our SWAT team, and I pointed out because we have an EMS license for our SWAT team, an EMS license for our search and rescue team, and then one in our jail. The jail is the most important one because you have people's undivided attention, for lack of a better word, for however long they're with you, to where you can then provide them probably the only medical care they're going to have, make sure they're safe and stable in your correctional facility, and same with mental health, to where we can address those needs so that when they go back on the street, they have resources. And so in our jail, it's hard because you're competing with St. Charles, EMC, or whatever they call themselves now, and all the surgical centers that are paying very good money right now. If St. Charles gets the contract their nurses want, they will be paying 1.5 times more than our nurses are getting in the jail. Which, what does that mean? Do your nurses jump ship? So we're going to have to figure out a way to provide that quality healthcare within our facility and still be competitive to where you're going to get talent. And so the jail is the most important part right now because we're responsible for those people while they're with us and making sure that they have those tools so when they go back on the street, they're ready to be on the street and they don't come back to us. So that's one of them. Second, search and rescue. Our search and rescue team is easily one of the busiest in the state. Look where we live. They're constantly out there helping people, and they're a huge organization. They've got, last count I had was 18 medics and a doc. So they have a doctor, 18 medics, and they're probably as busy as maybe like a Blackfeet Ranch fire or Sun River fire. I mean, their patient care reports are pretty high. They do a lot of business. So that's our second thing. And it seems minor, but those are all volunteers, but we have to keep them trained and educated and make sure they're up with all their equipment. And that's expensive too. Because we don't charge for search and rescue. Most people don't realize that. If you're stuck on top of Smith Rock and you call 911 for help, search and rescue is going to come get you. They don't charge you. Redmond might charge you when we give you to Redmond for the ride to the hospital. But we don't charge.
We try to.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Sir, in the back, I'm sorry.
Is overtime pay a problem, and if so, how can it be controlled?
Overtime is another newspaper article. Is that what made you think of that question? Yeah. So the newspaper is having a field day with us, and then there's a couple of third-party websites out there that are not helping either. Overtime is a problem. So overtime is a twofold problem. We have overtime because we can't keep staff. Let's be honest, nobody wants to be a cop right now. There's not a line out our door. The world hasn't done us any justice the last 4 years. It's a tough spot to fill. So we have a staffing problem to where now we have to be dependent on deputies to stay longer, work double shifts, work time and a half. I mean, it's not easy, especially in the jail environment. That's our first problem. Second problem is we can't seem to control it. So right now, we don't have any sort of backstop to it. So we have an overtime mechanism to where if you have a lieutenant who's making pretty good money, and if you're paying a lieutenant overtime to go drive through a state park, and he's making $280,000 a year, and he's an exempt employee, and you have deputies who are barely making it by new deputies who are making it $60,000 a year with no overtime, there's a question about that. I have some concerns about why I'd pay a lieutenant to go work in a jail handing out dinner trays or driving through a park making $250,000 a year when deputies can do that job for far less money. Or jobs that a sworn employee can do or are doing now that a civilian can do. We have a paid sworn lieutenant who orders uniforms. That's what he does. He's kind of an administrative lieutenant. Why not fill that with a civilian person who we can pay less money with, and then I'll have another uniform that's a sworn police officer that I can take out and put on patrol or answer calls to citizens. So there's a lot of job transferring I think we can do to save on that overtime. Recruiting is a big thing that we need to do, though. We need to find talent, people who want to be in the business, who will treat it like a career with different backgrounds. Sir.
Thinking about Portland and the attractiveness of working there as a policeman versus here, isn't that a source of some officers wanting to get out of there and come here in a different environment, or not?
If they can afford to live there.
Here.
Yeah, here. So we see a lot of that where people will make offers and then people will come look at housing and say thanks, no thanks. We have deputies who, once upon a time, it was a requirement for a Deschutes County deputy to live in Deschutes County, and over the years the sheriffs have said, I realize that they can't afford to live here, so if one lives on Crooked River Ranch or at Prineville and they have to commute, that's what they have to do. So we see a lot of that where people want to come over, or they come from California or Washington, and then they do the math and it doesn't pencil out for them. That's the first problem. Second problem is police work has become different. Case law, we have some progressive prosecutors who don't want to charge crimes, and it's hard, it's disheartening. It's like if I was a plumber and I kept wanting to fix things, and then the state said, nope, you can't fix that plumbing that way. Nope, you can't do this either. Oh, nope, that's wrong too. Police officers like their work they do, but if the judges and the prosecutors don't want to actually do anything with them, they become frustrated, and case law affects it. We went from being able to search a car on the side of the highway to now having to write an 18-page affidavit and convince a judge to search a car. I never thought I'd see that in my life. It'll be to the point now where we have to get a judge to approve even interviewing somebody. And that's the way things are going. So police work has become a lot harder. So people who are already in hard environments are saying, this might be my opportunity to do something else. And so we've seen it in the profession where a lot of people have left altogether, or they've taken other cursory roles in law enforcement. But it's also a generational thing where sometimes, I mean, my daughter included, where they don't feel like things are careers, it's a job. We talk to young people today who say, hey, I wanted to check out this cop thing, see what this is all about. If I don't like it, I'll go back to Dutch Bros. And I mean, really, that's a problem. And then the military, who once used to put out a really quality candidate for law enforcement work, that the soldiers are coming out to different. They were not the Marines that they were 20 years ago. It's a different environment, different people, different mindset. But your marketing of your services, you know, I never thought I'd see where I have to recruit people on Snapchat. But that's the sign of the times. Sir?
Why do you want to do this?
You know, the big thing...
You talked about a lot of negatives, so
Yeah.
what's in your thought tank?
The challenge. I made a career out of buying businesses taking them apart, rebuilding them, making them more efficient, and putting them back into service. So I love the county, I love the people I work for, and I love the agency. You guys have the most amazing deputies and people who work in your office who love the work they do. They just need the support to do it better. And so I'm going to get them up to that next level. Sir?
I thought we were at the max on that increment tax levy that we voted for a few years back. We're not at max yet?
Oh, we just went to max.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
They went to the commissioners, I want to say it was June of last year, May or June of last year, and asked to turn them all the
So
way.
the golf carts were the key to the reason why we had to go to max.
I don't know if that's the case.
See where you're going.
Yeah. If I get elected, I'll sell you, we're going to put them up for sale.
So can legally with Oregon's weird tax law, they could go back out and ask for more?
So that they're taxing districts.
Right.
So in order to go back and ask for another taxing district, they have to dissolve this tax district.
Okay.
Which to me sounds risky. So what you have to do before you can even get it on the ballot is dissolve these 2 taxing districts and pray to all things holy that you're going to get these other 2 taxing districts approved by the voters.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then you got nothing.
See, I'm on the fire board, so that's why I'm asking.
Oh, so you know about taxing districts.
And yeah, and we just had we just put in a new 5-year levy. We're going to kill one and add another one. And we only passed by 140 votes, which really,
I thought the margin was bigger than that.
no, it was, so.
That's a nail biter.
Yeah. No,
That's
it
a nail biter.
Got to be. And then now we're talking about, well, to buy a fire truck's $1 million now.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we've got 2 on order, but it takes 2 years to build it. So at least we're locked in on the price. But that's why I was asking on the income. I thought, so now I know how it works. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's a range. And so there's 2 taxing districts.
Right.
One for rural Deschutes County and for those that live in the city.
Mhm.
And it depends on, because obviously if you live in the city, you have your own policing services. So the sheriff doesn't charge you for that. So there's 2 taxing districts for that reason.
So why did we get out of traffic? Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know that we got out of traffic. It's kind of a belief system. So the sheriffs, each sheriff has got their own
Right.
vibe on how they want to handle traffic. Some like it, some don't. Some prefer to give out warnings, some promote tickets. It's different on every sheriff. But during COVID, it changed a lot of how we did business. We were instructed, nationwide, spend as little time at somebody's window as possible because of exposure. And so a lot of times, deputies and troopers would rather let the speeder go by than expose themselves to COVID. And then I think it just kind of carried on even after COVID ended. We still do traffic, but we need to do it, form a regional team is what I want to do, is work with our other agencies, work with our neighboring cities, with OSP. When you have a major crash, you have so many different components to that investigation. You have everybody from a DRE who's going to examine the drivers. You have crash reconstructionists who bring the technology, who will recreate that scene on a computer. You've got specialists who can tell you what skid marks mean and download the computers. Those computers in your car capture so much data that they can tell you exactly how fast you're going and how you were inputting into the steering wheel and all the things you were doing inside the car during that crash. It's pretty spectacular. So they have bring all those people, your prosecutors, everybody, and study that crash, rather than having one poor trooper with a camera and a clipboard who tries to redo it himself. It's not easy. But if we can bring we used to have a traffic team to where we could bring all those people back together and answer those questions. But we've, just over years, just everybody kind of went their own ways and priorities changed. But I want to bring that back. Sir?
Yeah, you mentioned you have to get a warrant if you have a traffic stop and suspect you have a drug search issue.
You do.
Is that what happened on 97 the other day when they stopped those folks that had fentanyl?
That was me, yes.
That was you?
That was my team.
Okay.
So there
You
used
had
to be
get
a
warrant and go to a judge?
So Oregon used to have an exception to the warrant. So one of them was mobile vehicle. If a vehicle had 4 wheels and it could drive away, you could search that car so you don't lose the evidence. We lost the exception in a case law out of Yamhill County. So now on the side of the road, we have to articulate why we want to search the car, fill out an affidavit, and if you haven't read an affidavit, it's an 18-page essay as to why you should go in that car, and then email it to a judge, which has changed because we used to have to read it to a judge on the phone, and then the judge will approve or deny your request, and then you could execute it.
right?
What's that?
Immediately, I assume.
Depends on what your definition of immediately is. My immediately is different than some judges.
Well,
But
yeah, and you're at risk of, you're waiting there. I mean, this is crazy.
well,
Crazy.
yeah, Oregon's got its own thing. We're in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals out of San Francisco. They determine all of our appeals cases. Our Oregon Appeals Court determines them. So we get case law from different directions, and they all have different beliefs. But until the legislature changes some of these laws, that's one of them. And then the other one was drug dealing. So we used to be able to charge for attempted delivery of drugs, meaning that he and I were going to talk about a drug deal. I could arrest him for attempting to sell drugs. But now we actually have to have watched the drug deal, have pictures of the drug deal, and have him admit to selling me drugs before I could charge him with selling drugs. That's also an Oregon Court of Appeals case. Sir?
We're talking a little bit about the taxing districts.
Mhm.
Do you know how much of your area would be under compression or not under compression?
You're talking about like which part of my area? Deschutes County?
The city or the,
Okay.
I mean, when you start changing that tax amount, it affects other people than just your department.
It does, and I have the compression numbers. I didn't bring them with me, but I will tell you that the metrics that's being used is right now we're at $1.47 per thousand, and the compression rate that would be mostly felt on our back end on taxing district 2, which is the rural, and I don't have that number off the top of my head. Any other, sir?
I'm not exactly sure on this, but I think there's somewhere around 200,000 people in Deschutes County. Is there a ratio, and given how vast Deschutes County is there a ratio of how many deputies per mile that you want or per person that you try to maintain? And if so, what is it and where are we?
It's not so much a per person. So we have different areas that we patrol, and then we have 2 contracts with cities, with incorporated cities. So the metric that we generally will use is that we try to keep a staff of 12 per shift for the county. And generally the way that looks is we have 2 in La Pine, sometimes 3, 2, sometimes 3 in Bend, 2 in Redmond, and then on average 1 to 2 out in Sisters, and then the rest of them are going to be supervisors or supervisory roles. We have a minimum staffing we try to keep right around 6, so we've got half that. We're 3,000 square miles, so 6 deputies covering county is a lot. We are dependent on our partner agencies from the city. Redmond, Bend, Black Butte Ranch has a police department, Sun River has a police department, and then of course state police. So there's no real formula of how many per, but 12 is generally what our mission is to have on the road at 1 shift. We work 2 shifts, day shift, night shift. For those of you that ever work shift work, we work 2 days on, our patrol does, 2 days on, they get 24 hours off, 2 nights, 4 days off. Now that sounds fun, but the 2 days to the 2 nights, after about age 35, bodies don't like that anymore. Yeah, it doesn't work so well. Any other questions for me?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have a little gift for you, real quick.
Oh.
This is for a local artisan, Brian Watts, and it has a
Oh, that's
Kiwanis
beautiful.
for you. So,
Maybe we could just even get over.
oh. So we can take a quick photo.
Yeah, well, there we are, the flag and the poster. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy campaign
Absolutely.
season. We really appreciate it.
I'll be here if you have any other questions.
Yes. And in honor of our guest, Ken, today, bravery is not the absence of fear, but action in the face of fear. Churchill. It said unknown, but I'm going to go with Churchill. All right, we are adjourned.